let's get right into the news here. And the first news or first bit of news is, as Beat pointed out, really only 2 sentences. This is that Brian Michael Bendis is hired by Fox right now to write a script. Doesn't sound all that difficult here. And they have Tim Miller directing it. Doesn't sound all that bad here. Or uncommon. The big thing is it's an X-Men movie. It's a mysterious X-Men movie right now. The working title is 143 or 143. I mean, honestly, I'm excited about this because we talked about this before with Brian Michael Bendis leaving Marvel to go to DC, and how the fact that when he was at Marvel, he did all these different characters. He created all these different characters, and the Deadline article even, basically says after that he created, the Miles Morales character, Jessica Jones. He's done, all these different characters. Riri Williams with Ironheart, and he tells really great stories too. It's one of these things here that they could be doing this as a if Disney doesn't buy us thing. This is possibly a good jumping on point for cinematic universe.
Yeah, and Beat's pointing out something very interesting, which is he just left Marvel to go work at DC. People have been asking if he's going to be involved in DC film projects, either in the movie universe or the TV universe. And so it is interesting for him to go, at this point, back to do Marvel characters in one of their film universes, not technically Marvel's, but at Fox. But it's perfectly okay. Now,
because how is that different than Mark Guggenheim being executive producer over at the Arrowverse, working for DC, but being a comic book writer almost exclusively for Marvel?
Well, it's different in the sense that he just went over to DC, and so the concept, what the perception was, is that he was going to be working on DC projects, and everyone's saying, "Oh, are you going to be working on DC film projects?" No, I don't have anything planned. I don't have anything planned. But eventually, that was the hope. It's not like there's anything wrong with it. It's just it's surprising based off the timing. Yeah. And he's said very openly he has a great working relationship with Marvel still. He wanted to make sure that when he left, he wasn't going to disrupt anything like his friendship with Joe Quesada or any of the people over there. He's got nothing bad to say about Marvel in leaving. He was just looking at it as, this is the right thing for me to do right now because I feel like I've done everything I can do in Marvel Comics. Mm-hmm. But Marvel films or Fox films with Marvel characters is a different thing. So the 143, there's a couple of different guesses as to what that's referencing. There have been 2 X-Men number 143s. There was the Grant Morrison run that had an issue 143 that involved Wolverine and Phantom X and had something to do with the Weapon X project that Wolverine was originated in, and going backwards and involving characters like Captain America and stuff that were kind of like precursors of what Wolverine was supposed to be, the Secret Soldier project.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem as likely as the other one, which was Uncanny X-Men 143 was a Kitty Pryde story where a demon showed up and kind of chased her around. And I believe, if I remember this correctly, it's like, I don't think I ever actually got to read the issue, but I read stuff where she referenced it later. She wound up killing it by using the engines from the SR-71 Blackbird, the jet that they use. There has been talk recently of them doing a Kitty Pryde standalone movie.
Mm-hmm.
And there is the New Mutants movie that has been advertised and pushed back very far. That is more of a horror-themed film involving X-Men characters. This tonally sounds like it could be similar to that. It could be the next film in that series, because Kitty Pryde is age appropriate to the New Mutants, or at least was when they first appeared and she was pulled over that team at one point. I assume that it's going to be a new take on Kitty Pryde. I don't think that they're planning on getting
Ellen Page
back in. Thank you. Especially because it sounds like she had a terrible relationship with one of her films in that universe. That is possible. That seems likely. Bendis has a long history of writing Kitty Pryde. It has involved her in his Ultimate Spider-Man series, and had her date Peter Parker over there. Had her involved in his Guardians of the Galaxy run as well, and of course he wrote X-Men for a while. So, well, I wouldn't necessarily say he's the main voice associated with Kitty Pryde. He has a love of the character, so getting him involved in a Kitty Pryde film makes sense.
And Beats asking, but him doing it with Tim Miller, doesn't that imply that they'd rather pick a lesser known or offbeat character? I don't necessarily think so, because you look at the Everyman, they don't know who Kitty Pryde is. So she would still be a lesser known character because she's not up there yet with the Wolverines or Cyclopses or Storms or Jean Greys.
She hasn't been consistent as a regular X-Men character. When they first introduced the X-Men into the cartoon universe, there was a short, I think it was done as they did a Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends episode that involved the X-Men, and she was part of that. And then they tried to do a spin-off cartoon called Pride of the X-Men, which was Kitty Pryde was the introductory character, that much like they used Jubilee in the 90s cartoon. And then she went off to Excalibur for a long time in the comics.
Yeah.
Disappeared out of the main group. But Deadpool wasn't really a lesser known character. Deadpool was a huge character for Marvel for a long time. Cable is a huge character for Marvel. They just weren't. The outside world knows the X-Men as Wolverine and Storm, and then to some degree Cyclops and Jean Grey, and then a lot of characters that are around that, and Professor Xavier and Magneto. Those are to the regular people on the street the most likely you can get them to say, oh, who's an X-Men character. Now that we've seen Deadpool perform what he did, what comes up to me is who do you pull in to make a movie work? And it has something to do with their power set. It has something to do with the notes of their character that ring true to the writer or the producer to say, this is why I want to use this character. I want someone who's presumably a teenager if they're introducing her again, or if they have her as an adult, that'll be a little unusual, but not far away from where she is in the comics right now. You have her, she does have her religious aspects as far as being a Jewish character in the comics, and that's been brought up in multiple stories. There's a lot of different stuff that can come into it, but her power set, for one, tonally speaks to something that you can use in a dark movie because of the fact that she's able to kind of disconnect herself from the physical world, give some interesting to do in a, like, being chased around. Well, if you're someone who can walk through walls, you think you can get away. But if you're being chased by a demon, that makes things a little bit different. Especially if she's inexperienced and she doesn't know how to utilize those powers well. I don't know. I think it's potentially cool, no matter what it is. It's Bendis writing. It's Tim Miller. So people who have a great deal of success so far with X-Men characters and characters in general, that we'll see.
So the next story is one that we pushed back from last week, and that is that DC is working on a Lobo movie, and they are looking at Michael Bay to be the director of the Lobo movie. Now, Corey, explain to people who Michael Bay is.
Michael Bay has brought you such things as Tinky Winky Takes Over the Universe, and Look at My Balls Part 2 for Munda.
Okay, in all seriousness, though, explain, because Lobo is a more obscure DC character.
Yeah, so it's funny because I sat in and was part of the live audience for the Ink Geek Studios Mind of a Geek this past Friday. They had a friend of our show and many of our shows, JF DeBow, on, and they actually talked about this a little bit, and there was some back and forth, and I had forgotten that we didn't talk about this on air. Somebody just rambled for an hour about some bullshit, but JF had many of the same thoughts on this as I do, which is Lobo is a character that was basically created to be a Michael Bay movie, without there being a Michael Bay at the time. So in the 80s, Lobo was introduced as part of Legion, which is not Legion of Superheroes, but it was kind of like a present day version of characters and concepts that were from Legion of Superheroes. And Lobo was this guy who was the last of his planet, the last of his race, essentially. He killed everybody else on his planet.
He's like, oh, damn it. I was going to do a joke with this, but you beat me to... he's like Superman, right?
He was the counter to Superman. He's the last of his planet because he killed everybody else on his planet, and he's just the biggest badass around. He was kind of designed... his first designs were weird. He looked very psychedelic space. It looked more like he was out of Thor Ragnarok than what he eventually looked like. But he was kind of designed to be DC's answer to Wolverine taken to a very, very high extreme. And it was perfect for going into the 90s where extreme was everything. Lobo became more of a badass biker in space who was a bounty hunter who just ate planets and crapped out laser beams and just in general was a total tool head over the top, but could throw down against people like Superman and hold his own. The Rock would have done a really good job with this. The Rock playing Black Adam is more attuned to my heart, but The Rock would have been a very great person to play Lobo. And they did, in the crossover of DC versus Marvel, they had people vote to see who won in specific matchups. So they had Storm fight Wonder Woman. They had Superman fight Thor, I think. All of these different character matchups happened. And they had Wolverine fight Lobo. But they had people call in to a 900 number, I believe, and vote for who they think should win. Much like when people called in to determine if Robin should live or die in Death in the Family. Because people don't fuck up when you let the audience decide what they want the story to be. Every time it led to dumb things. In this story, it was very stupidly done that Wolverine beat Lobo. And on a power scale, there's no way in hell. Plus, you don't even see the fight. They go behind a bar and you just see like sound effects on them bashing each other. And then you see Wolverine come walking out and drink a beer. So it was a real fucking shit show of a comic of like, if you're going to give us the matchup, give us the fucking matchup. They didn't do it. Anyways, Michael Bay is a person who does big, loud, boisterous, exploding, extreme movies. I don't personally enjoy his stuff because for me, the stories are just very hard to follow. They just jump from scene to scene to scene to scene because this looks cool, this looks cool, this looks cool. Hey, let's spin around everybody as they try to look outward. And it's his Bad Boys films. It's his Transformers films. There's just an aesthetic to them that I find uninspiring. But if you were going to say to me, who the fuck should do a Lobo movie? God damn, you can't pick a better person than Michael Bay. Because whereas one of my complaints about Zack Snyder doing superheroes is that Zack Snyder is very dark. He was right tonally for the Watchmen stuff. He was certainly right tonally for 300, which is probably his film that I like the most because it makes the most sense in relation to the original work. But I don't think he's right tonally for people like Superman or Wonder Woman or even Batman. Michael Bay is right tonally for Lobo.
Yeah.
You know, it's just that's the perfect matchup. And that's what I'd like to see. You can give a director who does specific things well and find something that fits them, that suits their work. You can also have a director say, "Oh, I'm going to go outside of my comfort zone and I'm going to do something different for myself and enjoy this character in the way that they're supposed to be done and just put myself into making that story instead of what I usually do." But it depends on the director. A lot of them just would be like, I just want to make my movie and throw whatever you've got as a character into it. And I'll tell you what you should think about Clark Kent and Man of Steel. And I'll tell you what you should think about Batman and why Martha is a killing word like in fucking Dune. It just, I get this. It's still not going to be for me.
Yeah.
But I'll probably crack up when I watch it on cable.
So the next story, it's about the Benji franchise. Now, for those of you guys who do not know, Benji appeared in the 70s and 80s and is going to be coming back as a Netflix original movie.
Just so you know, it's not Brad Pitt aging backwards.
No,
It's
it's Benji was sort of like
Lassie.
yeah, it was sort of like Lassie. It was like it was a take on Lassie, but the dog wasn't a it's a
I can
smaller
go into
dog.
this a little bit more.
Yeah,
Benji
yeah.
is a small dog. He's a mutt. He wasn't Lassie because he didn't have the pedigree. He was more like a stray dog that people found, and very adorable little thing. Now, of course, Benji was multiple dogs over the years because the dogs die fast, unfortunately. And I remember specifically there was Benji the Hunted, I think was the last major film release that I remember starring the character. And that's Benji running through the woods all over the place. I had a love of this movie, which starred Benji, but as a kid, I didn't know that. I just thought it was all the same Benji. And it may have been the first one, called Oh Heavenly Dog. And Oh Heavenly Dog starred Chevy Chase as a guy who was murdered and came back to Earth as a dog. He basically goes up to heaven and they reincarnate him, and he doesn't get sent back because he doesn't go through the line and stuff. He's like, yeah, I gotta get back down there. And he goes back down to Earth and they put him into a dog's body. And then in that dog's body, he tries to solve his own murder and at the same time protect this woman that he's kind of in love with and becomes her pet. But the whole time he's just kind of pining away for it, everything. And it's a really cute, maybe a little cheesy now at this point, but in the 80s, it was like, I watched that thing all the time. It was a cute film, had a sweet ending that was still a little sad, but was like, to me, the Benji movie. And there were other movies that I think were like Benji in my mind, but probably weren't Benji, like Chomps, which was about a robot dog.
Yeah.
But I was a fan, when somebody said, hey, there's a new Benji project. And I was like, oh, right on, cool. But I aged out of it really quick, and then they stopped putting the stuff out there. This is more like classic Benji. It's a couple of kids find a stray dog. They try to hide it from their mom, and then it becomes an adventure about the things that happen with the kids and Benji trying to protect them. It is a perfect reboot of this actor/character/dog.
So the brilliant part with this, with the Benji franchise, it was created by Joe Camp. A lot of the stuff was written and directed by Joe Camp throughout from 1974 until 2004 was the last one. And then you have the main run essentially from 74 to 87, with the last one being Benji the Hunted, like you mentioned. And then they tried to revive it in 2001 with Benji's Film Festival, 2004 with Benji Off the Leash, which was the last one that was directed by Joe Camp. And his son is actually the one who is behind the 2018 reboot here. And they have a trailer up. It's coming out in March. Also, it's done. It's with done with, which seems like they're producing everything. Blumhouse Productions. They're producing this film. I'm excited for this because it's a family friendly movie. I mean, it's one of those that you don't go. It's not like, oh, family friendly, but not for the little kids. Like from what it sounds like, this sounds like a movie for everyone. Everyone who loves being alive or whatever.
So there's the Netflix stuff that comes out that is huge and gets a lot of press, like your Stranger Things, like your House of Cards, your Orange is the New Black. And then there's the direction that Netflix has been doing with more family-oriented stuff. And even that, we've got the One Day at a Time reboot and the Fuller House series. So this is leaning more towards that, is that Netflix has content for everybody. And this is one of those things that I think parents are going to like. I think there's an option when you turn on Netflix if you want to log into one of your own personal user IDs, or if you want to log into something that's completely safe for family, kid-oriented stuff. And this is going to land on that kid-oriented thing, which is great. Yeah. Because what parents need is the ability to turn on the TV and ignore their kids for 4 hours straight.
And I mean, honestly, I think this is like Beat put in here, put in our chat. Don't forget that Ted Sarandos wants to release 80 movies this year. So yeah, they're not all going to be the big name blockbusters. It's going to be these, the more family friendly, the, indie darlings, all these different types of movies. And so it's, it does make sense in that aspect as well, because pretty sure a lot of the people there were like, hey, I remember watching Benji, the Benji movies when I was a kid, or maybe they had the lunchboxes like my mom has and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
and the last Benji movie that came out was in 2004. Like you said, it was written by Joe Camp and did not do especially well. So it maybe they were just like, this is not a movie that is probably going to land well in theaters. But it is one of those things that when it's on TV, or if it's available to them watch at home, that they'll watch and might rewatch and rewatch and rewatch. That's the thing, is I feel like we're at a point right now where movie theaters, you have to fight to get the attention and retain attention, and people just don't casually see movies in the same way that we used to, and go see things that were just like, oh, well, let's see what this is about, or, oh, I heard this new movie is out starring this person, let's go see that. It's more of like, there's 9 Marvel movies and 3 DC movies and a couple of Star Wars movies and Jumanji for some reason, and all these things are out, and that's taking up all of our movie budget this year. And where's the new Minions / Despicable Me / probably not Shrek anymore, but things like Shrek and all those people, and the new Incredibles, the Pixar stuff. And those are the things that the kids are going to choose to go see. And I have a feeling that a Benji movie in 2018, because it's not going to be nostalgic for the kids, it's going to be nostalgic for the parents. I don't think the parents are going to say, hey, we should go see that Benji movie. And I don't think the kids are going to say, I want to go see the Benji movie. So put it in a place where kids' eyeballs land on it now, when they're just looking for anything to watch. And then they build up a love for Benji like we had in the 70s and 80s. And hopefully it will help going forward to kind of reboot the franchise.
Yeah. Now, going on the production side, because like I pointed out, the Benji film, this new film is being produced by Blumhouse Films. This is, by looking through the Wikipedia rabbit hole that I have, this is their first family movie.
Yeah, a lot of their stuff has been based around horror movies and stuff.
Yeah, horror or thriller, yeah.
They did do Gem and the Holograms, which was a horror movie in the sense of like, what the fuck makes you think that counts as a Gem and the Holograms movie, you idiot?
Yeah. And the only other one that would come close, but they have it listed as a drama, which is understandable, but they have The Resurrection of Gavin Stone, which is it's done by WWE Studios and Blumhouse Tilt, but it was a movie that starred Brett Dalton and Shawn Michaels. I mean, yeah, this is really their first foray into this, and also keeping up with tradition. Brandon Camp is writing and directing this, so I mean, it's son taking after father here. But yeah, and also just so you guys know, it comes. The trailer is out now. You can find it on Netflix's YouTube channel, and in Benji premieres, which they spelled premieres in the article, on Netflix on March 16th. So yeah. Now, real quick, before we get into me talking about the movies that I've watched the past 4 days, I want to let you guys know how you can help us out here, help the network out over here. And it's by going to our Patreon over at patreon.com/galacticnetcasts. And on there, we just ask that you donate however much you want. You do as little to as much. And with that, you're helping us keep the lights on here. You're helping us to pay for the WordPress blog, pay for all the services that we use on the audio end. And if you find any enjoyment out of it, we just ask, help us out. Patreon.com/galacticnetcasts.
For more on this Galactic Network podcast, go to gncast.com. That's GNCASTS.com.